The following program is a production of Pioneer Public Television.
Hello and welcome to Compass. This week in Pioneer Studios in Granite Falls, we take another look at a program designed to help children. The program is called Grow Our Own, and Pioneer first partnered with the Southwest Initiative Foundation on this issue in 2016. And since that time, several communities have worked to improve the lives of children in southwestern Minnesota. With us now is Diana Anderson, the president and CEO of the Southwest Initiative Foundation. And the Southwest Initiative Foundation has been a leader in started this program called Grow Our Own. Diana, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here with you, Les. Thank you.
You've been working on this for quite a while. I'd like to find out, first of all, why this initiative? I mean, what was it of all the things that the Southwest Initiative Foundation could have been involved with? Why did you decide as a group to do this kind of a project?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, and we get that a lot because we are a community foundation. So we serve the 18 counties of southwest Minnesota, and we've been around since 1986. And we have had a broad mission to support the economic and community well-being of all the communities in our region. And as we were putting together our strategic plan for 2016 and beyond, we were celebrating our 30th anniversary. And our board really took stock of what have we accomplished in a very broad way in terms of helping our communities grow and thrive, and what do we want the next 30 years to look like? And so for the first time really in our history, we decided to put a stake in the ground around a particular issue. And as we looked at the data and were first introduced to Robert Putnam's work in his book, Our Kids, the American Dream in Crisis, it felt just natural for us to focus on the future of children in southwest Minnesota. And we're taking a cradle to career approach, so we're thinking about children from their families all the way through their school years and their career development and how they make a place for themselves in our southwest Minnesota communities.
Now I know over the course of a year and a half or so, you've had some communities have taken this idea and made it their own.
Absolutely.
And some successes. So give us an example.
Yeah, so Laverne is a community that I think at our 2016 summit, they brought, 10 to 15 people from the community. So they already had some energy around this before they even got to our first summit, where we hosted Robert Putnam, who came and spent the day with us and really unpacked his research around what it means for kids to be in crisis in terms of the lack of opportunity. And they went back and looked at what was going well in the community and looked at where the opportunities were and immediately identified several things that they could do. One of them was advocacy. So they quickly connected with their legislators to make sure that their legislators understood what their community looked like. And through Minnesota Compass, which is a website that provides demographic information about all corners of the state, they were able to get information on what poverty looked like in their community, what were the challenges for low-income families. And so they quickly made sure that their legislators knew that children were struggling in their communities, that their free and reduced lunch rate and the number of children living in poverty just didn't feel acceptable to them, and they wanted to work on strategies. The second thing they did was to really look at programs that were already in place and how they could enhance them. So they have a remarkable program that is a partnership of the school district, the local community, business leaders. It has broad support, and it's called Child Guide. And that is a program that's really designed to connect kids with resources that help them thrive. And so they looked at what are we doing well with the Child Guide program, and what more could we do now with this new information we have around the gaps that kids are facing. So they've really worked to take a whole family approach, recognizing that when parents do well, their kids do well. And so sort of taking a more holistic approach to how they do the Child Guide program. And it's one of those things that I would just love to see replicated in every community in Southwest Minnesota. It's phenomenal. They also have taken the lead on some engaging K-12 experiences. So they're really interested in ensuring that all kids have access to programs and services that are really going to have them help them have an engaging experience once they get into school. So they're running a program now called Southwest CEO, and CEO stands for Creating Entrepreneurial Opportunities. And again, it's a partnership of the school, the community, area businesses, and a number of communities. So Edgerton, Adrian, Laverne, and Pipestone are all participating in this. It's part of the school day. Kids get credit for it. But instead of being in the classroom, they are out in the community. They're engaging with business leaders. They're learning how to start a business, create a business plan. They have mentors. And it's just been a remarkably successful program at helping kids make a deeper connection into their community.
So as we look at Laverne or Pipestone, of these communities that you mentioned, I know there are other communities working on these things as well.
Yes.
I know that part of the goal that was discussed in Robert Putnam's research when he was in Marshall with you and other things is the idea that in much of the country there is a greater challenge year to year of people who are growing up in poverty.
Yes.
That it's much less likely than it was 20 or 30
Right.
years ago that they will ever get out of poverty.
Right.
But as we look at the region, I know you said that southwestern Minnesota and Minnesota as a whole tends to do better than other places, correct?
Yes.
So as you look at those statistics, what can we learn about what we're doing well already?
Right. Well, I think we have messaged this movement around Grow Our Own that we are working from a position of strength. You know, I have colleagues around the country that are working in communities where it's incredibly challenging to try and move the needle on moving children and families out of poverty. And, you know, we have excellent public schools, which is not the case in many communities. We have wonderful, safe and caring communities. There's a sense of that still small town community connection and caring that's very much an asset. We have safe communities. Some of the safest in Minnesota are here in Southwest Minnesota. So a lot of assets already that support children and families. It's really, I think, you know, what we've tried to do this first 3 years is raise awareness, because I think we can become a bit complacent almost to the good things that we have going for us. And that was the conversation that, you know, the board had. We're doing pretty well. Is that good enough? And recognizing that if we don't proactively think about the long term, what we want our communities to look like 30 years from now, what we want our children to have 30 years from now, and recognizing that it is shifting. The, you know, the supports that used to surround children in our communities have changed, even though we're working from this position of strength. We do tend, I think, in you know, all of our families to think as much about our own children or grandchildren as we do about the entire community. So this is really lifting up an awareness of all of the children in our community are incredibly important, and every one of them needs an opportunity to reach their full potential.
Right. As you talk about the differences between Minnesota and other parts of the country, I remember there was a line, and I'll paraphrase it from Robert Putnam when he was talking about nationally looking at this issue, and he said that the worst mistake that some of these children make is that they're being born to poor parents.
That's right.
Which, of course, you know, you can't help but who you're born to, but
Right.
that for those people being born to poor parents may be one of the single biggest impediments to reaching the American dream, because his research had shown that mobility from one generation to the next really isn't there. But in southwestern Minnesota, as you said, because of the education system and other things, there is still a greater chance of having that mobility.
Absolutely, and there is research, that would bear out the fact that kids who are born and raised in Southwest Minnesota, by the time they're 25 or 26 years old, are doing better than their parents for the most part. And so, again, it makes perfect sense to work from this position of strength, to not let us lose that competitive edge in terms of thinking about how our children do well. Because the other thing, conversely, what I hear as I travel around the region is, employers saying that they can't find skilled workers, communities really stressed about declining populations in their community, and worrying that the future isn't going to be as bright for their children as it was for themselves and their parents. So getting out in front of, building on our assets and trying to identify those things that we can fix early on, that we can address early on, like they're doing in Laverne with the Child Guide program, making sure that kids are connected. Another simple example, and I think one of the most powerful, is in Windham. So the Windham superintendent and the school board made a decision a couple of years ago to waive fees for student participation. And so, and Putnam talks about that in his research. 30 years ago, there was no concept of pay to play. You participated in band and you played football and you did all of those things just as part of your school experience. And as school budgets have become crunched and it becomes more difficult to pay for those things, we've started to charge fees for those things. And it puts up a barrier to being included, to having an opportunity to participate. And I've talked to a lot of school superintendents who will say that they have programs where students can get scholarships, but they also understand that most high school students are not going to come to the office and acknowledge that they live in poverty and they need a scholarship to play football. So they're essentially excluded from those kinds of activities that are so important to their overall development and leadership capacity. So Windham eliminated pay to play, and so now all of their extracurricular activities are available to all students. And of course, the school board had to dig deep into the school budget to figure out where that money was going to come from, but they did. And I think it just shows a remarkable commitment and insight into the importance of those activities for our kids.
Well, and you mentioned, again, in Putnam's research, one of the elements of having a lower participation fee or an eliminating participation fee is that by eliminating that, you can start to look at rebuilding relationships.
Absolutely.
Because the children who are struggling in poverty 30 or 40 years ago, they may have had a great relationship with a coach or a band director or these other supportive adult figures, and if they can't be in those participation events, having those caring adults, there just aren't as many of them in their life.
Exactly. And it just is so remarkably simple when you think about it. We often think that addressing poverty, and it is, these are complex and systemic issues, and so you don't imagine that the solutions could be as simple as we're going to find $40,000 in the school budget to ensure that anyone who wants to play in the band or play basketball can just step forward and do that without having to worry about coming up with $100 or buying the instrument or whatever it might be. And a lot of community leaders have been really good about coming forward too and saying, we're going to set up funds so that if students need band instruments or uniforms, things like that, that they can get access to that. Some of the work that communities have done on the front end of this, really going back to the community and identifying those significant immediate needs around the opportunity gap, that kids might be going home hungry. And so there already were, but a number of backpack programs have sprung up over the last couple of years, just because communities are now more aware of the free and reduced lunch numbers in their community. They might be shocked to find out that nearly half of the kids in their school district are eligible for free and reduced lunch, which could likely mean evenings and weekends they don't have enough food. And certainly learning is impaired when you come to school hungry. So that's been a really powerful connection, I think, between schools and churches, faith communities, and just the community in general in terms of taking action, something immediate that we can do right now.
So that sounds as if it's been an important part of your work is the awareness, because of course in many cases poverty may be something that people don't necessarily see or understand, because depending on the circles that they're running in,
Right.
Those kinds of numbers, as you said, half of the students being on free or reduced
Right.
lunch, that may be a complete surprise to a great many people.
It is a big surprise to many people. So it really is. When we started this, it's, obviously we want to inspire action, but one of the most important things that we thought we could do at the outset was raise awareness, that we would take a couple of years of digging into Putnam's data and looking at what's happening in Southwest Minnesota. We commissioned research to see what the opportunity gap looks like specifically in Southwest Minnesota so that we had a better understanding of it. But then to really raise awareness, because that was my own experience, Les. We raised our children in Canby, and it's a wonderful community, great place to raise children. And I really had no idea of the circumstances of neighbors and my children's classmates until we started volunteering with our church youth group. And all of a sudden, I have this real in-my-face awareness that there are children living in really difficult circumstances, no fault of their own, no choice of their own. But when I compare to how well my children are doing, I can see that they're about 10 steps behind the starting gate in terms of how well I can expect my kids to do with sort of the airbags, as Robert Putnam calls them, that we have around our children, and how some of these children in loving and caring homes, but the financial resources and the fact that parents are working countless hours trying to make ends meet can really have an impact on their success. And if they're not connected to the community, if they're not doing well in school, it really has an impact on the rest of their life when you think about launching their career and their stability in the community, their ability to have their own family, sure, start a business, buy their home, etc. That goes way back into preschool. So we really are talking about this from cradle to career and what we can do to support kids along that continuum.
Which can cover everything from the nutrition that you mentioned,
yes,
to then the opportunities, to then having a lack of participation fees so that we have other mentors in the communities. And I think also, as I've listened to the speakers that you've had at conferences, mm-hmm, as you talk to people in their 20s or 30s and talk about what made the difference for them in escaping poverty, yes, they will almost invariably cite one or two or three mentors who helped them through that difficult part of their life.
Yes, a caring adult in their lives outside of their family who took an interest in them, who saw the potential in them. And it's one of the things, again, we are focused on in that, so we're using 5 pillars to think about Grow Our Own. The first is stable, caring families. The second is early childhood, quality early child care and education. The third is engaging K-12 experiences both in and out of school, and then career on-ramps, getting them launched into a successful career, and then the safe and caring communities. And in terms of the K-12 experiences, getting them connected outside of their family with a mentor, whether it's Boy Scouts, whether it's, again, band and choir, whatever it might be. The CEO program that has started up in Southwest Minnesota also exists in Candy-Ojai County. They've got a very successful program there. But it's a deep connection into the community for those kids that gives them that sense of belonging and that sense of hope and possibility.
I know when you mentioned that Southwestern Minnesota is doing well, we should also mention that Minnesota in general tends to do better.
Yes.
Quite well on the national average. However, as you dig through the statistics, there are some areas where Minnesota and Southwestern Minnesota are clearly falling short.
Yes.
So I think we should touch on those.
Yeah, so I was just at an event about 2 weeks ago in Des Moines called the Northwest Regional Prosperity Summit, and it was hosted by an organization called Prosperity Now, and they do a scorecard for every state and the District of Columbia, and they look at the overall well-being of the state in terms of a lot of different indicators, income, home ownership, education, graduation rates, those kinds of things. And you know, as we're used to in Minnesota, we rank quite high in overall well-being. So we're actually first in the country in terms of the overall well-being of our residents. But when you factor in the economic disparity of people of color and Native Americans, it's a pretty dramatic drop. And so actually in terms of that gap, we're 44th, so we're really down towards the bottom in terms of we've got a large disparity between our general population and our new immigrant and minority population. So it's really something for us to pay attention to. It certainly means that the solutions that come forward are going to have to take that into account. How do you close that equity gap at the same time you're trying to close the opportunity gap?
Which sounds very similar to what we've heard in Minnesota for some time about the achievement gap
Yes.
in the schools, because the achievement gap has been something that lawmakers and policymakers and educators have wrestled with for quite a long time. So that same concept, is what we're seeing here.
Absolutely. And in Southwest Minnesota, because so many of our communities of color are new immigrants, one of the challenges can be the language barrier, and the research that we did in 2016 actually bears that out, that a disproportionate number of people of color in Southwest Minnesota aren't English language proficient, and that has an impact on if you're a little child, children are resilient and they'll figure out how to speak multiple languages pretty quickly. But it still gets you off to not a fast start, let's say. If you're thinking about belonging in your community, if you're thinking about work, those language barriers can really be the thing that prevents you from moving past that gap and fully participating in education and the economy. So, we're thinking about and looking at what is the role that the foundation can play in terms of helping to close that language gap so that it's more in line with gaps that the rest of the state experiences. But it is statistically significant in Southwest Minnesota in terms of the number of our individuals of color that are not speaking English proficiently.
So now that we're a couple of years into the Grow Our Own program, and you've had communities, whether it's Laverne or Pipestone or many of the other communities in our region that have decided to do something about this. What's next for Grow Our Own as you look at, if you just gaze forward a couple of years, what do you want to see happen with children and getting them out of poverty in southwestern Minnesota?
Well, we've made a 10-year commitment, and we're 3 years in, and as we work on the next plan, so we'll launch in July the next plan, and it really is starting to move from awareness to action, and it's learning from what is working in our communities, and it's thinking about best practices. So some of the things that we've really identified as best practices, one thing, it's important that the work be community-led. We might think we have solutions and great ideas, but if we've learned anything over the years, it's that the real solutions come from within the community. And community can be the city limits, it can be a community of color, it can be a school district, whatever it is that defines that community. It's about coming alongside and listening and trying to suss out the things that are really important in the community, and then what are the resources that the foundation can bring to bear. And I think that one of the success stories around that has really been in Hutchinson with the career and technical program that they've developed there. We played just a very small role as a convener and a connector early on, bringing folks together to have some conversations about what do we want career and technical education to look like in the school. So it was a catalyst role with a very small investment. And the community took it from there. Manufacturers and employers said this is what's important. Teachers and educators said this is what's important. Parents and students said this is what's important. And collectively, they have created a really powerful program that is focused on career and technical education.
So as we close out this, we've got about a minute left or so. For people who want to learn more about this or seek other resources, where should they go or what should they do?
Well, they can visit our website. They'll find Grow Our Own all over our website. They'll find all of the research that we've conducted and links to the Pioneer Public TV programming that's been recorded at our summits, and that's at www.swifoundation.org.
Okay.
swifoundation.org.
Very good.
Yep.
Well, with that, we have to leave it there. Diane Anderson, Southwest Initiative Foundation, thanks for joining us on Compass.
Thank you.
That's it for this week of Compass. We hope you'll join us again next week.
Do you have an idea for Compass? Send your suggestions and comments to yourtv@pioneer.org. Have you missed an episode of Compass? Every episode is available to watch free online at video.pioneer.org or on the PBS Video app. And keep up to date with the latest Compass happenings on our Facebook page. Search Compass on Pioneer on Facebook and hit the like button.